A position you own is down 18%. When you first made the decision, you had 3 reasons. 2 of them have weakened. But instead of reopening the decision, you search for one more chart, one more forecast, one more argument that says the original idea is still intact. Eventually, you find it. The relief is immediate. Holding the position now feels patient rather than passive. What began as discomfort has become a respectable explanation. But notice what actually happened. The evidence did not improve. Only the story did. This is how many bad decisions begin. Not with stupidity, not with panic, with a conclusion that arrives before the test, followed by an explanation intelligent enough to protect it. So the real question is not why people make mistakes. The more useful question is this: why can a smart person make a weak decision feel so strong? Daniel Kahneman's work on fast and slow thinking offers a useful model. The mind operates through 2 broad modes. One is fast, automatic, intuitive, and emotional. The other is slower, deliberate, analytical, and effortful. Kahneman called them System 1 and System 2. The fast system is not defective. It is essential. It reads a face, detects movement, hears tension in a voice, and handles familiar situations without forcing us to calculate every step. If a car moves towards you, speed is more useful than analysis. The problem appears when a system built for quick recognition is asked to judge a noisy environment. Markets are noisy. Business forecasts are noisy. Hiring decisions, career choices, negotiations, and major purchases are noisy. Feedback is often delayed. Luck and skill are mixed together. Incentives change what people notice. A good outcome can reward a poor process, sometimes for years. In those environments, fast thinking still produces an answer. It simply has less reliable material to work with. Its first habit is to create coherence. Give the mind a few rising data points, and it sees a trend. Give it a confident speaker, and it infers competence. Give it a recent headline, and it overestimates the event. Give it a rising asset price, and it assumes that someone must know something. The mind does not wait for a complete picture. It builds the best story it can from what is immediately available. That story is often strengthened by fluency. An idea that is easy to understand feels more credible. A clean chart feels more informative. A neat spreadsheet feels more disciplined. A confident explanation feels more complete. But clarity of presentation is not the same as clarity of judgment. A market narrative can sound convincing because it selects the facts that fit. A forecast can look rigorous because the assumptions are hidden behind precise numbers. A financial decision can sound responsible because the language is careful. The danger is not that the explanation is entirely false. Usually it contains enough truth to be persuasive. The danger is what it leaves untested. This is where intelligence can work against judgment. A smart person can produce more reasons, defend more assumptions, and build a more elegant case. Intelligence may improve the explanation without improving the decision. The slow mind is supposed to examine the answer, but often it arrives after the preference is already formed. Instead of acting as a judge, it acts as a press secretary. That is why one question matters so much. Do not ask only, "Can I explain this?" Ask, "What would make this explanation fail?" The second distortion is loss aversion. A loss is not experienced as the simple opposite of an equal gain. It usually carries more emotional weight. Once a decision moves against us, the mind often changes the question. The original question may have been, "Is this a good use of money, time, or risk?" The new question becomes, "How can I avoid admitting that I was wrong?" That shift is easy to miss because it rarely announces itself. It appears as patience, conviction, loyalty, or a desire to wait for more information. Sometimes those reasons are valid. Sometimes they are language protecting us from the pain of closing a mental account at a loss. This is why people can hold a losing position too long, sell a winning position too quickly, or reject a reasonable risk after one painful experience. The numbers have not stopped mattering. The feeling changes which numbers receive attention. The position in the opening example is not dangerous because it is down 18%. A price move alone does not prove that a decision is wrong. The danger is that ownership and loss can quietly change the standard of evidence. Ask yourself, if I did not already own this, would the same facts persuade me to choose it today? That question does not tell you what action to take. It reveals whether the reference point is controlling the judgment. The third distortion is availability. What is vivid, recent, or emotionally charged feels more important than what is common but quiet. A crash that dominates the news feels more likely to repeat. A company everyone is discussing feels more significant. A dramatic success story feels more representative than an ordinary base rate. This becomes especially powerful during market cycles. When prices rise for long enough, recent experience becomes the teacher. Risk starts to feel theoretical. Caution looks outdated. The people who took more risk appear more skilled. A favorable environment rewards a behavior, and the mind mistakes the reward for proof. Then conditions change. What looked like skill may turn out to have been exposure to a forgiving cycle. What looked like confidence may have depended on liquidity, sentiment, or incentives that were never under personal control. A favorable environment can teach the wrong lesson. A hostile environment can also punish a sound process. This is why judging the quality of a decision only by its outcome is unreliable. Good judgment has to separate process from result. That is where slow thinking becomes useful, not as a permanent state and not as a demand to doubt everything. Slow thinking is expensive. It takes attention, interrupts momentum, and forces us to remain uncertain a little longer. The goal is not to think slowly about every choice. The goal is to recognize which choices deserve structure. 3 tools are especially practical. The first is the outside view. The inside view asks, what do I believe will happen in this particular case? The outside view asks, what usually happens in cases like this? From the inside, we see our effort, our plan, our intentions, and all the details that make the situation feel special. From the outside, we see comparison. We see how similar projects, forecasts, investments, or decisions actually turned out. The inside view gives us a story. The outside view gives us a base rate. Neither is sufficient alone, but when they disagree, the disagreement deserves attention. The second tool is a change my mind rule. Before becoming emotionally attached to a decision, write down what has to be true. What evidence would weaken the case? And what would cause you to reconsider? Do this before the outcome begins affecting your identity. The purpose is not to predict every possibility, it is to prevent the standard of evidence from moving whenever reality becomes uncomfortable. The third tool is a premortem. Imagine that the decision has failed 1 year from now. Then ask, what most likely caused the failure? This gives doubt a legitimate role before failure occurs. It makes incentives, hidden dependencies, and neglected risks easier to discuss. A team that cannot imagine failure is not necessarily confident. It may simply be trapped inside a coherent story. These tools are simple by design. Structure does not need to be complicated to be useful. A short scorecard can separate factors that would otherwise blur together. A written rule can expose a moving standard. A base rate can challenge an exceptional story. Structure does not guarantee the right answer. Nothing does. What it does is make bias leave fingerprints. It becomes easier to notice when evidence has changed, when incentives are shaping the narrative, when a recent event is replacing the long record, or when confidence is coming from social agreement rather than a tested process. None of this means intuition should be rejected. Intuition can be highly reliable in environments where patterns repeat, practice is extensive, and feedback is fast. An experienced operator can recognize a familiar problem before being able to explain every cue. That intuition has been trained by repetition and correction. Many money and market decisions do not provide that kind of training. The environment changes. Feedback arrives late. Outcomes are noisy. A person can be rewarded for a weak process and punished for a sound one. In that setting, the feeling of clarity is not enough. The judgment principle is this: trust intuition only where the environment is regular, practice is repeated, and feedback is fast. When stakes are high, feedback is delayed, or the situation is noisy, slow the decision down and force it through structure. Return to the position that is down 18%. The disciplined question is not whether the loss feels painful or whether a reassuring story can still be found. The disciplined questions are what has actually changed. Which evidence would matter if I did not already own this? What would I need to see before I changed my mind? Those questions will not remove uncertainty. They are not supposed to. Their purpose is to stop a preference from dressing itself as evidence. The goal is not to become slow, cautious, or skeptical all the time. It is to recognize the moments when fast thinking is most likely to mislead you, when the story feels unusually clean, when the crowd feels unusually certain, when recent success starts to feel like proof of skill, when a loss feels too painful to examine, when one vivid example begins to stand in for reality. Those are the moments to pause. Not because intuition is always wrong, but because the most expensive mistakes often begin as answers that feel obvious. Clear judgment begins when you stop asking only, "Does this feel right?" and start asking, "What would have to be true for this to be wrong?"